Okay, so we've come back from the break, which hopefully will be cut out because otherwise it's a bit awkward, isn't it? So now we're gonna
Mm,
have to rank these albums, and this is quite a tough band to rank because all 7 albums are great. A lot of it just ends up for me
mm,
being personal preference, or me going like, okay, this album is more important. I think overall it's a better statement. It's a stronger statement rather. But it really depends. The one thing I will say before we get into this, I haven't already said, is I really, really do think that Death aren't as well known as they need to be. I know they're massive in extreme metal, but there are so many people out there who don't know who they are. And I honestly think that Chuck belongs up there as an icon alongside Rob Halford and Lemmy and Ozzy Osbourne. I think he is that important.
yeah. No, I agree. He's basically the James Hetfield of death metal.
Yeah,
Think about
yeah, he is the godfather of death metal.
it. Indeed, I completely agree with you. And like it's so hard. It was just one of the hardest. I think it's probably the hardest one yet.
It's got to be. And this is the thing. Before we start this, number 7 doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that something needs to go last, unfortunately.
It was
So,
that probably the hardest thing was putting this album in the seventh place for me personally.
yeah, because I told some of my friends what the ranking was before recording this, and they went, "What? Why have you put that last? Do you not like it?" And of course, I love it. It's I love the other ones a bit more. But my number 7 is. Are you ready for everyone to
Ooh.
turn off this podcast and start screaming? Number
Yes, I am.
seven.
I really want to know.
Number 7 for me. Leprosy.
Oh, okay. Um, I'm really curious. Yo, I'm moved to it.
Now, obviously, it's phenomenal. Pull the Plug is an iconic track. I love Open Casket. The artwork is great as well with the guy with the face. It's awesome. I think for me, it, it's at number 7 because something had to go last. And I think like some of the other records in their discography, I either personally prefer or I think are, like I say, stronger artistic statements and are a bit more, I guess, just creatively superior. But it's everyone's. It's just an opinion. Like we say, the worst Death album, in my
Hmm.
opinion, which is Leprosy, is still amazing. So
Yeah, it's fantastic.
you know,
I,
something
I
had to
get
go
I get
last.
you. I get your feeling towards it because like it's really hard to pick it. Like putting any album in seven places feels
Yeah,
unjustified, but it has to
I
be
I
because
just
it's seven
happen.
albums.
Yeah, I just happen to prefer listening to the other 6 more. I enjoy the other 6 a bit more. That's literally why it's last. It's still a great record.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's anything else you want to add before moving into mine?
Now I want to hear your number. What your number 7 is?
I'm not sure if this is going to be met with any disapproval, but it's not leprosy, so I
Okay.
don't know if it's going to be as like controversial as that. But my least favorite is actually spiritual healing.
Hmm.
And I know some people might disagree with this one, and I get it. It's not, and like you said, it's not a bad album. I still really enjoy spiritual healing.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I was really battling for seventh place between two albums, which will be the next album in my list. So like it
Sure.
was quite a battle there. And I'll get to why I put this one seven, the one six, but I feel like I need to tell you what the sixth one is before I say that.
Yeah.
So
So
I won't give that away.
shall I do my number 6 then?
Yeah, go and do your number six, and then I'll get my number six, and I'll explain why
Yeah.
the both of them in
Yeah.
that place. Go
So
ahead.
I think that will become more apparent as it goes on. Really. My number 6. Again, people are going to be going like, why is that so low? I love this album. I think it's amazing. But number 6, Scream Bloody Gore.
Mm.
It is.
Fair. It's fair. It's fair.
I think rather than try and explain why it's number 6, I'm going to explain why it's above Leprosy. I appreciate that a lot of people prefer Leprosy. I appreciate that Leprosy is a bit more sophisticated with better production and mixing, and it's darker and heavier. I think for me, the iconic tracks on Scream Bloody Gore and as an entire album, I think it stands out more to me. And I think that I don't know. I just find myself enjoying Scream Bloody Gore for what it is a lot more than I enjoy Leprosy for what it is. Even though I still love Leprosy, I like Scream Bloody Gore a bit more. It's one of those albums for me, Scream Bloody Gore, where it's like it's a fun album to just whack on and headbang to for like half an hour, 40 minutes. Because it's the first album, so it's quite primitive. I definitely think that Chuck would go on to write more sophisticated things, more interesting and I guess better things. That's why
Yeah.
it's number 6. That's why it's fairly low, but I still love it. I still think it's an amazing album, one of the most important metal albums of all time. There's no doubt about that. So, what's your number 6 then?
Well, here's the surprise. It's a snap. It is also Scream Bloody Gore.
Okay, fair
So
enough.
the only difference is that I was now like you kind of made a clear distinction between the 7 and 6, which I'm going to do with my 6th and 5th, but with my 6th and 7th, which was Scream Bloody Gore and Spiritual Healing, I was really torn and well, what's the least in these places because I feel like Spiritual Healing had better songwriting, but Scream Bloody Gore, I have to give it due to historical context, like the fact that it was mostly Chuck on his own,
Yeah,
the fact that he was so young at the time, and the fact that it was so important for its time compared to Spiritual Healing when that came out. I feel that Scream Bloody Gore it reserves the 6th spot above it. I feel like I listen to Scream Bloody Gore more often because though it's not as sophisticated, I can enjoy it as just a raw piece of material, for what it is. If that makes
yeah,
sense. I think Spiritual Healing, it's fine. It's a great album, but I feel like Spiritual Healing, because there was a big change in Death sound and Chuck sound as a whole, and with the upheavals going on within the band at the time, which we talked about, I think it did affect the writing a little bit of the overall album. But
yeah,
so it's probably like my least favorite one to listen to is Spiritual Healing, but doesn't mean that I don't enjoy listening to it. It's still a really good album, and it's still got some really good moments. It's just I think it's weakest compared to the rest for that reason. And I'll get into what happened with Human afterwards. I'm not got that, but that's why I put that 7 and 3 Bloody Gore 6. So
cool.
we're gonna. I think is that enough? Do you think that's a good? Is there anything else you want to ask questions about there? Or
I,
should I
I
go for the
I think
fifth?
that's good. Yeah, my number
Okay.
5 then.
Okay.
My number 5 is Spiritual Healing.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
It's not as high as some of the other albums because I definitely think that as Chuck went on, he improved and wrote, I guess, more interesting stuff. But Spiritual Healing is, for me, it's above Leprosy and Scream Bloody Gore because I think it's more interesting to listen to and I find myself enjoying it more. Part of that is that, I mean, you, Reagan, know me personally well enough to know that I love my prog. So that's
Mm.
probably why I prefer those first 2 albums. The title track is fantastic. You know, some of the other tracks in there are just really, really cool in terms of
Mm.
how far he was pushing death metal quite early on. You know, it's I get why some people don't like it. I've met some people who say it's their favorite death album, which I also understand.
Mm.
But
Yeah, it's not a bad
yeah,
album, like we've mentioned many times. It's not bad. Just because it's my 7th doesn't mean I dislike it. I listen to it and I
yeah,
still enjoy it.
yeah, yeah. It's just a really interesting piece of work. Really, it's one of the last kind of I say last. It's one of the kind of it's still like old school death metal, but it's a sign of things to come.
Yeah, yeah,
I
definitely. I
think,
think it's
yeah,
like the calm before the storm, you could say, maybe.
yeah, for sure. So
So do I? Oh, yeah, go on. Sorry.
what's your next one then? Your number 5, isn't it? Next.
Yeah, yeah, my number 5. Which one you just mentioned, Leprosy.
Okay.
So, Swim Bloody Gore, I was kind of like, this is like the easiest part of the rank for me. I've always thought Leprosy was better than Swim Bloody Gore since I
Hmm.
knew of them. Not that I'm saying Scream Bloody Gore is bad. It's just I think Leprosy is just a little bit more sophisticated. I feel like the dynamics, it's just more dynamics going on. Lyrically, it's more interesting, despite the fact that it's still got the death metal element. I feel like there's more sophistication in the lyrics and the songwriting and the dynamics. Though Scream Bloody Gore is amazing in its raw fullness and has some amazing riffs, but I just feel like Leprosy draws me in a bit more because it's just dynamically there's more going on. That's why I chose.
Yeah, I think I do agree with you. It is more sophisticated and interesting than Scream Bloody Gore. I just find the songs on Scream stand out more. There are more excellent songs on Scream Bloody Gore because I mean, obviously, like the Leprosy, the title track, and like Open Casket and or Pull the Plug, of course, are like amazing. But not every single song is amazing. It's just overall, it's a fantastic album. That's why I prefer Scream Bloody Gore.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, obviously, songs like Leprosy and Pull the Plug are some of my favorite songs of them.
Mm.
However, I mean, even Scream Bloody Gore has its victim of having certain songs that are not as good as others. I feel like they both have the same issue. But I think just Leprosy is a bit more sophisticated. Doesn't mean that the song's necessarily bad, don't get me wrong. It's just there's definitely stronger songs on Scream Bloody Gore compared to other songs, and then there's the same thing with Leprosy. I think they're both a victim of the same thing. I just think with Leprosy being a bit more sophisticated in its dynamics and lyrics, I just prefer that more as a result.
I think the only negative thing I can really say about Scream Bloody Gore is a lot of the songs do sound the same. They sound really similar.
Yeah, I did get that a bit, and though they're really good, I do feel like Leprosy pulled me in more
Yeah,
because it's not as repetitive.
that's fair
Doesn't mean
enough.
that Scream Bloody Gore isn't good either, though. It's still got some great songs.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
number
for sure.
four, Ruben, go for number four.
My number four, which may be controversial to some. Some may go, yep, that's fair enough. I can see why you don't like that as much as the other ones. My number four is Individual Thought Patterns.
Mm,
A lot of
Matt.
the reason why it's lower than certain other albums is it's kind of like Peace of Mind by Iron Maiden. It often gets overlooked because it's
Yeah.
sandwiched between two absolute classics. But with Individual Thought Patterns, it's great. It's a fucking great album.
Mm,
I just enjoy the other ones a little bit more. For me, I definitely prefer Death's 90s output, like the kind of more technical proggy stuff, to the earlier stuff, although I still love the earlier stuff.
mm.
Um, yeah, but like Individual Thought Patterns, what a fucking album, because I'm trying to remember what songs are on there now. It starts to blur into one. I've listened to this album so many times. Individual Thought Patterns. Yeah, so Overactive Imagination, um, is probably my favorite song on the album. I like In Human Form. Actually, I'd probably
Mm,
say the Philosopher is my favorite song on the album. Actually, just thinking about it, because the Philosopher is such an iconic, well written track.
yes.
I think for me, well, like, I'll kind of explain actually that when I get to my number three. But yeah, that's kind of why I definitely prefer it to their first three albums, but I don't enjoy it as much as the remaining three that I haven't mentioned yet. For reasons I'll
Mm.
explain when I get to my number three. So, Reagan, what is your number three? What's your third favorite Death album?
Snap. It's also individual 4 pounds.
Okay.
So honestly, a lot of the reasons for it are very similar to yours.
Mm.
Because well, like you said, it's kind of like sandwiched in between, sort of like not being as bad, not like being better than the other three, the first three albums, but not as good as the other three albums around it.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, obviously, The Philosopher is one of the best songs from Death, but
Yeah.
I feel like if it went really for The Philosopher, it'll probably be further down. I wouldn't be
Um,
surprised. But at the same time, there is still really good songs. on the album, so I ain't gonna shit on her too much. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
And I think
that's
Gene,
fair.
having Gene in the band was great, but I just you can kind of feel that Chuck and didn't have enough time to really focus on the writing on the album as much compared to the other ones. And
Yeah,
I feel like though I feel really bad at putting it further this down because I was having Gene Hogan as he's a fantastic drummer, but
yeah,
I feel like he didn't really fully shine through until the other album, which we already mentioned.
yeah. It's just a case of like it's not that we don't like this album. It's more just
Mm.
there are other albums we enjoy more. So something has to go before something else. Even
Yeah,
though
yeah, exactly.
like we keep saying every Death album is a masterpiece. So
Yeah, and there's still really good songs on people bands like
yeah,
Mentally Blind and Trapped in the Corner.
yeah, Trapped in the
Is
Corner is
that
great.
right? The great songs. I mean, I don't really. I feel bad putting this further down, but I just feel like it's not quite as sophisticated as the other three, and I'll get into that. You said so.
Yeah. So
So you go for your third moves.
my number three, which I think some people watching this will go, okay, well at this point in the list, I can kind of predict what album's going to come next. And my number three is Human, and
Yeah.
I love all the Death albums. These top three obviously are the ones that I really really love.
Yeah.
Human, wow, I love the fact that it's because it's quite technical and complex compared to what came before it. It's only 34 minutes long, and I kind of feel like any longer it'd be too much. It's a quick
That's true.
little journey, a quick little dive into like some crazy metal. So let's talk
Mm.
about some of the tracks. I mean, like I've said before, pretty much every
Okay.
single song is a standout. Some of my very very favorites are, let's see, Flattening of Emotions, Suicide Machine, Together as One, Lack of Comprehension, Cosmic Sea, and Vacant Planets. So but the whole thing, it's paced really well. The songs on their own are fantastic. The playing is amazing. The journey from beginning to end in this album is one of my favorites in their discography. Um, to this day, it's still considered one of Death's best albums, and for good reason, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a very, very good album. Um, and you make great points.
So, what's your number three then?
Hang on. Snap, it's also human.
Right, there you go. Yeah, I think it's kind of
Again,
like
kind of predictable. And I've already mentioned what my top two is in my first episode, so I think everyone knows where this is going to go on my side. I mentioned
yeah,
in this one, but why is human number three and the other two are above that and everything else is underneath it? I was thinking to yourself, well, let's be honest. The writing is just a lot more sophisticated than the other ones. Some of
yeah,
the best written songs I've ever heard. Lack of Comprehension's fantastic. Suicide Machine, fantastic. Flattening of Emotions, it's a fantastic. I mean, how much? What else do I need to say? I mean, you mentioned most of it already. It's just it's groundbreaking. But that's the word I give it. It feels groundbreaking. I
yeah,
can imagine at the time thinking like, oh, the spiritual healing was great, but then he just took everything they were trying to do with spiritual healing and just perfected it. And it was
yeah,
that there.
yeah,
This is new. This is the Death Wind. This is Death's direction. This is what they are now. They're not what they were. They're this. And
yeah.
this is like, and I imagine at the time it was like, oh my god, I can't imagine listening to this when this, I'll be blown away. Feel contextually speaking.
Definitely.
And I think it's probably one of the biggest creative breakthroughs in the discography. I feel like, though you can argue some of the creativity in it with two albums was better in some regards, but like the breakthrough of creativity that came from this album was just crazy in a chronological aspect. You could call it
Um,
the great leap forward, if you will.
yeah. Your mic keeps cutting out, Reagan. I don't know if there's something up with it or.
Oh, Oh, sorry. Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's just when you're talking, certain words are much quieter than other words. It kind of cuts out a little bit. I'm
Oh,
not
okay.
sure if
Is
it's
it?
like a signal
I
or
don't know
something.
why. Maybe if I put the mic closer, maybe it's still gonna pick it up. Okay, how's that? Is
But
that okay,
it's
Ribs?
yeah, it was fine anyway. It was just it kept kind of turning off and turning back on again, like cutting out
Oh,
and
did
cutting back
it?
in. Yeah,
I don't know if I were able to fix it. I mean, did you get what I was saying?
yeah, I can hear what you're saying. I just think like it's worth looking at for the future.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But
Sorry.
you'll
I
hear what I
wasn't the.
mean when you go to edit this.
Yeah, I'll try and sort it out in the editing. Is it not doing it now?
It's not at the moment. If it does it again, I'll put my hand up.
Yeah, you do that. So it might be my mic, but it could be my internet signal as well. Who knows? It could be
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
random disruption because it's been doing that recently. So if it doesn't happen
Okay.
again, it could just be it probably just be the internet.
Hmm.
But like I said, let me know. Um, anyway, so yeah, they're great leap forward. That's basically what I mean. And so yeah, number two, um, not number two, number three is human. So it goes to number
Yeah,
two now. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry.
yeah. So my number two won't be the same as yours. I know this. My number two, and I get people might be like, "How is this not the best one?" My number two is Symbolic, and I get, a lot of people are going to be like, I cannot hear anything else except for the fact it's the best Death album, and I get it. I get people love it so much. I obviously love it, but it's my second favorite one, so obviously I appreciate how amazing it is. I think the reason for me why I put Individual Thought Patterns below this album and Human was because for me, Human and Symbolic are much bigger impacts than Individual Thought Patterns. Human was obviously a massive step forward from spiritual healing, and then Symbolic was like, wow, this is like so good. This songwriting is amazing. And
Mm.
then Individual Thought Patterns, while great, doesn't hit me quite as much as Human or Symbolic. But I mean, it's Symbolic. It's one of the greatest metal albums of all time. You've got the title track, Zero Tolerance. Crystal Mountain is iconic. It's one of the absolute best ever metal songs. Perennial Quest. Just a few tracks mentioned there, but to be honest, the way to appreciate this album is just to listen to it from start to finish because it is pretty much flawless.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Is that you okay? Is my mic still okay?
Yeah, that was fine.
Okay, no. You looked a bit concerned, so I was just worried in case.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
well, it
Sorry,
was
carry
mostly
on.
me. It was mostly me talking, so I don't know if I've noticed anyway.
Yeah, yeah, true.
This is riveting for the folks at home. So, okay, Reagan, what is your second favorite Death album?
Well, I feel like anyone who watched the death metal episode will know what I'm going to say, and you know what I'm going to say. It's obviously the Sound of Perseverance. If you, oh, is it
Uh,
happening again?
yeah, it just did it just then. It does sound like when you said it, it did make me think. Actually, yeah, it might just be internet connection distorting it.
Oh,
But
okay. Do you think it's the internet causing the issue
I
then?
think it might be. But I think as long as what am I trying to say? Yeah, if you look at it in the edit and just kind of, it's probably fine. It might just be the internet. But
What am I? What I might do is I might try and fix it in the audio production. I might try and like compress the vocals a bit on this in those areas to kind of
yeah.
bring it up and down a bit more.
But I mean,
I'll
if
try my
you're
best.
yeah, but if you're recording audio your end anyway, it should be fine. It shouldn't matter. Um,
Okay. Yeah, because you never know. It could be. It might. I'll look back at it anyway and see what happens. But towards
yeah,
the end, and if I can't fix the issue, I can always just take this off and just do it as a normal mic.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, hang on. I've got someone knocking on my door now. Sorry, hang on,
Okay.
Rubes. Oh, I'll edit this out.
Yeah.
Really sorry about that.
It's okay.
It was very sudden. Yeah,
Shall
what I'll do
we?
is I'll look back and try and fix it if I can fix the issue. If not, I can always just take the headphones off and try and do that as just using my phone mic. So no, I don't have any issues with that.
Yeah, that's fair. So, okay, so um, that's gonna get cut out, and I'm gonna come back in now. So, Reagan, what is your second favorite Death album?
Obviously, I mentioned and in the first death metal video we did, it's Sound of Perseverance is my second. So the opposite to what your top two is going to be.
Right.
Why? I mean, this is the tricky part. Why did I put this as number two and number one? Don't get me wrong, it's a great album. It was actually the album that got me into death.
Same here.
So and the first song I heard from this album was Voice of the Soul. So like, it is a very nostalgic album for me.
Yeah.
So it's a bit painful in some way to put it as number two, but I just feel like this is just not quite as, I don't know. It's just something about this doesn't captivate me more than my number one, which you know what it is anyway.
I
I
yeah.
feel like though it's still death metal, I don't know. I feel like to me, there's so much melodicness going on that sometimes it takes the edge off a bit too much for me personally, compared
Hmm.
to what my first album, the first album does. I mean, I have to say, I can say, because everyone knows what the number one. It's going to be Symbolic. So,
Yeah.
like, I feel like Symbolic to me, compared to this, like, I feel like it didn't quite achieve it as well as Symbolic, and now trying to add that melodic edge while also keeping the heaviness. Don't get me wrong, the writing is still really good. There's some really good riffs, and I think influentially speaking, it's an important album. I just feel like Symbolic just executed the melodic mix with Death a little bit more bad. That's why I put this as number two.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, excuse me. I mean, I respect it. I get it. I mean, I've seen some people put Sound of Perseverance at the bottom of their list, and I think, oh come on, it's not that bad.
Yeah, let's be honest, they're just babies, probably thinking it's not heavy enough.
Yeah, it's a
It's
bit
too
like
buggy. You're sold out.
they really did go full on with the prog, or Truck did rather. This is like it's got some of Death's longest songs with like multiple sections and like guitar solos, bass solos, millions of riffs, millions of them, loads of structure changes, some weird time signature stuff going on. It's easily their most progressive album. But I
For sure.
mean, now that I've said it, I've given it away now. My number one, my favorite Death album is The Sound of
Ooh.
Perseverance.
You even
Look
got
at
the
that
vinyl
artwork.
out.
Look at that artwork. Isn't
Yeah.
that gorgeous? Yeah,
Fantastic.
this is
Do
the
you think that's the
vinyl.
Crystal Mountain itself?
Perhaps. There's the final lineup of Death.
Yeah.
You have, of course, the main man, Chuck, in the middle with the red shirt on. You've got Shannon Ham, Scott Clendenin.
Mm.
Controversially, a drummer I think is actually better than Gene Hoglan when he was in his prime, Richard Christie. Yeah, I mean, it's part of the reason why it's my favourite one is similar to why I believe you ranked it so highly on yours. It's your number two, so you obviously love it almost as much as I do. It's very nostalgic for me. In fact, the first ever Death song I heard was Voice of the Soul, which I believe you showed me at your house years ago.
Yes.
And when I was in uni, I joined a kind of technical thrash band for a bit as a drummer, and pretty much every other member of the band, when they found out I'd never listened to Death, went, "What the fuck? Go and listen to Sound of Perseverance. Start with that one." And then I listened to it and just fell in love with it. You know,
Yeah, yeah. It's
it's
it's a
just
really good gateway.
yeah. For me, the reason why it's above Symbolic is because I think it has some of some better songs. I think like Scavenger of Human Sorrow, Spirit Crusher, Flesh and the Power It Holds, which I believe is both of our favorite Death songs, right?
I was gonna mention that in my number one, but yeah, you're right. It is my favorite.
Yeah. So I mean, Well, the cover of Painkiller is phenomenal. Like, Painkiller by
Really good
Judas
cover.
Priest. Yeah.
It's because we mentioned they did another cover earlier, but the Painkiller cover, compared to their Kiss cover, it's just, I don't know, like something about it. They just took the song and made it their own, and it's really like it's like they made an already heavy song just heavier.
Yeah, it's just, one of the most iconic albums in metal. What a fantastic final album from one of the best bands of all time.
Agreed.
Yeah, what
Um.
what more can you say?
Well, no, I mean, obviously, I don't I agree it's not number one, but I agree that it's one of the best albums of all time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think it's a respectable first place. Like, I get it. So obviously, I'm gonna have to go to my number one, which I've already mentioned, Symbolic. So why
Yeah.
to me is Symbolic number one and not number two like yours. So I mean, the drums effortlessly just conduct themselves into this historical, essential album. I think the drums are really, really. I feel like though I don't. I mean, Christy or Gene. I mean, they're both really good drummers. It's hard to tell which one's better. I just feel like Gene just utilized the drums on this perfectly to a T. Not just this complexity, but just knowing exactly what to do and what to play and where to play it, and where Chuck and him just effortlessly conduct with each other to this amazing level. The overall album is just a better album to listen to all the way through. It just feels so smooth and perfect. Like it's one of those albums where I just generally feel like it doesn't need changing. I generally feel like I can listen to it and that it's perfect as it is. Um, and I feel like melodically they achieved a better outcome with this compared to Sound of Perseverance. I think they had so much prog and so much melody to Sound of Perseverance that though it's still got amazing songs like Flesh and The Power Holt is still my favorite, which might sound a bit weird, but I think this is an album Symbolic's better. And like when I think of like Crystal Mountain, it's just a perfect melodic sort of death metal song almost. Like it's got that
Yeah.
melodic feel, but it's still got all the edge. The way they can just keep a melodic, lovely melody with all this chaotic driven drums that just doesn't lose any of it at all. And I feel like it just something about that made it what it is and made it my number one overall. Obviously there's some great riffs like Symbolic's riff is fantastic and
Yeah.
memorable. Like I already mentioned Crystal Mountain, and so forth. Some of the lyrics are also fantastically written.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't really know what else to add.
I mean,
As far as I'm going to go, I mean, obviously I mentioned The Thousand Dies as well, being really great lyrically, but I
oh
don't need to
yeah.
go into.
I mean, it's not my personal favorite Death album. It's very high. It's my second favorite. I will say though, if someone has never heard Death before, I'd probably the first song I'd show them is probably Crystal Mountain.
Yeah, I feel like this is a thing actually. I feel like Symbolic is actually easier to get people into Death than Voices, sorry, than Sound of Perseverance. Because Sound of Perseverance, like Symbolic, has a more of accessible sound compared to the other Death
Yeah.
albums. I feel like the songs are so long and proggy, it's a bit difficult as well. Like, because like getting long and proggy songs can be difficult to pitch to people. Where if you get this album, the songs, they'll obviously have something like Fernino Quest or whatever, that's a bit long. But if you got like you said, Crystal Mountain, uh, a 5 minute long song is a bit more digestible than something that's 8 minutes long,
Yeah.
like the Fester holds. Or even some other songs like like I said, A Thousand Eyes, Zero Tolerance. They are they're easily digestible compared to the Sound of Perseverance. So I feel like I can see why this album's really good for getting people into that,
Yeah, for
and then
sure.
kind of waving in Sound of Perseverance to want to get used to the more weird proggy time signature, proggy sort of structures and signatures that the band
Mm.
has.
And I do get why some people don't like Sound of Perseverance as much because it does sound different to the other six albums that came before it. It's almost like an
Mm.
odd one out in a way. but it's still, I don't know. It to me, it's like symbolic, but taken even further and just blown up into these crazy prog arrangements. And I think
Yeah.
if someone was to argue, I don't like Sound of Perseverance, it doesn't really sound like death anymore. I think by that logic, I do understand why the most common number one I've seen is Symbolic. It is like the general sort of populace does seem to consider Symbolic their best album. I may disagree, but I understand why. Symbolic is amazing.
Mm. Well, this is the thing for me is that I've noticed that everyone's death list is almost different.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I've had people put Scream Bloody Gore as the number one, and I've had people put
yeah,
Sound of Perseverance as the number seven. I've heard people
yeah.
put Spiritual Healing right at the top, or people put Spiritual Healing right at the bottom, and I've heard people put the Human as the number one. I literally saw a list where someone put Human as the best album, and I'm like, I mean, it's fair enough, it's a great album, but this is what makes Death quite interesting is that some bands, when you list their best albums, there's a lot of parallels with all the rankings, you know. But
Yeah.
this is the one band where you just don't get the same list every time.
And I think that's because every album, like we keep saying, all 7 albums individually are masterpieces. They're amazing. So I kind of feel like it comes down to people's tastes and preferences. And because tastes and preferences can vary so widely between people, that's why people's lists with this band are so different. I mean, the most common one I've seen at number one is Symbolic. But yeah, I've seen people saying that Human's the best one, which I understand. People were saying Spiritual Healing is their favorite one, which I get, and some people were saying Scream Bloody Gore is the best one, which I think I wouldn't say it's the best one. I think what you mean is it's your personal favorite because it means something to you, which is
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
yeah.
music should do. That's perfect. So I mean, is there anything else we want to kind of discuss with Death? Because we've done. Oh, actually, should we recap our rankings quickly?
Oh yeah, yeah, sure. You can go first since you started the first.
So my number 7 was Leprosy. Number 6, Scream Bloody Gore. Number 5, Spiritual Healing. Number 4, Individual Thought Patterns. Number 3, Human. Number 2, Symbolic. And number 1, The Sound of Perseverance.
Beautiful. My end, it's number 7, Spiritual Healing. Number 6, Scream Bloody Gore. Number 5, Leprosy. Number 4, Individual Thought Patterns. Number 3, Human. Number 2, The Sound of Perseverance. And number 1, Symbol. Yeah, and I don't really know any more else to add to what we've already discussed, honestly. I think we've
Yeah, I mean,
had a good time.
Death
Unless
are
you.
just an amazing band. Their music will live on forever. They're one of the most important and most
Hmm.
innovative and creative and best bands in metal.
Yeah, and I think the first time I heard them, I was 15, and to this day, I still love them just as much.
Yeah.
Consistent. That's all I can say.
Actually,
Yeah,
I just want to leave this. I want to read something that Shannon Ham wrote in this booklet here, my vinyl, if you will indulge me.
I will.
Okay, so this is Shannon Ham in 2011. Chuck was more than just a friend. He was like a brother to me. Not only was he an incredible musician and songwriter, but one of the most respectful, honest, and personable human beings that I've ever known. I miss him every single day and often reflect on all of the countless conversations that have undoubtedly changed the way that I see, feel, and think. Sometimes we take so much for granted because we really don't realize what we have until it's gone. Not for a day, a month, or even a year, but really gone forever. When we think of people who have touched our lives in such a way that it affects who we are or how we feel, the significance of such a loss only grows over time. It doesn't get any easier, it doesn't get any better, and it doesn't go away. A void will always exist inside of those who are lucky enough to know Chuck on a personal level, as well as all of the fans that were and remain so connected to his incredibly philosophical point of view. The Sound of Perseverance closes the final chapter in a legacy that Chuck has left behind, and it will only continue to grow over time as future generations discover the meaning of perseverance, through the eyes of a genuine musical genius. The spirit in these timeless compositions will keep his memory alive forever, as history has proven time and time again. True art, created with true heart, never dies.
Ah, very beautiful. I mean, what
So,
can I say? He was a very unique individual with his own individual thought patterns, and his symbolic meaning in his music will live on. I'll stop.
the irony that the band is called Death and it is so
Yeah,
full of life and the legacy lives on.
I thought you were gonna say something else. Then I'm sorry. But yeah, true, true. Yeah, it's great, isn't it? Like so much. I suppose though, to really understand life, you have to understand death, and maybe that's what it's about.
And this is the appeal of death metal, I think. Death comes for us all. Everyone will die. One day you'll die. One day I'll die. This is just life.
There
So
you
you
go.
may
Try not
as
to
well
get
not shy
exes.
away from it. And because death is quite a scary concept if you think about it too much, which I try not to do, it's no wonder that the music is so aggressive in death metal in general. And I think Chuck understood this.
Yeah, no, definitely. He understood the human condition, and he really expressed it in his truest way.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
that's why his legacy will always live on in his music. Anyway,
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna head off.
Yeah,
So
I
we'll
think
say
that's a
bye
good
to our
place.
audience.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks for
yeah,
watching.
definitely.
Go and listen to Death. Go and listen to some Death. Raise a drink to Chuck. And yeah,
Yes.
cheers.
God, God bless Chuck, and take care, everyone. It's funny because I got a speech impediment and I can't say "ah," so I'm gonna be
Yeah.
wanking my albums.